we would be in trouble. Our customers, which we all are, would actually be in trouble. So once again, the electric system, we are transforming it. Electric utilities are working with entities like DOE, with NYSERDA, to do a whole host, an array of R&D, technology innovation, and in fact, I think in 2011, 39 or 40% of all new developments in PV were utility owned. So utilities are stepping up to the plate. That contrasts from 2008, only 9% of the PV development. So they are stepping up to the plate. They need to work with you. I think it's, who said this? It's a combination. We can do a lot of things if we work together, and through innovation and collaboration, we really can get where we need to go in the future vision of our electric power grid that's safe, reliable, affordable, and sustainable. So thanks.
All right, as folks hop up to the seats, I'm happy to open up the questions. I think folks are probably overeager. We had a big panel, and so fire away.
Karen, I like the concept of the smart inverter, and my question is, have you thought of the vision about the commercialization? Because the customer buys the meter, or the inverter, but the utility gets the benefit of having the smart inverter. I'm assuming that feature might cost a little bit more. So if it were on the market and available today, how would we potentially compensate the customer or give the customer an incentive to buy the better smart meter that makes it good for the utility?
Well, so I think what we'd be looking at is, a myriad of options. EPRI is not really in a policy-driven type of mode. We are an electric research and development company. So we try to inform the debate and the decisions. What we do know is those inverters with these grid-friendly functional requirements, and we've been working both with inverters, with photovoltaic manufacturers, and utilities to better understand what are those functionalities that we should be looking at. Anti-islanding, volt bar support, all of these things. What are the mechanisms to incentivize that? I'm not quite sure there, but I think depending on whoever owns the systems, we're going to see some benefits, both for the utility or the electric provider, but also the consumer.
And Jennifer, just to follow up on that, we're participating with EPRI on developing some smart grid functionality into the inverters. And where we see the value proposition there, I agree with you that you don't necessarily want to put that additional functionality onto the consumer, but net metering is an issue, and it's going to be an issue coming up for a long time. And as we start to look at PV and how the future of net metering will be configured, I think a lot of these additional grid support functions for inverters will play a key role in the future of net metering.
And to add to what Guy has just said, having just lived through an experience with a utility integrating a megawatt onto a 6 megawatt feeder for the first time, and one of the earliest projects at this scale in New York, that utility needed to have outside consulting engineering. And just to share a little anecdote very, very briefly, that consultant report had the potential of adding 15% to the system cost because they erroneously figured on a flicker result, a voltage flicker result, and fortunately, at my urging and on its own, the utility went to EPRI after I deluged them with EPRI literature, but they did it on their own too because they want to move ahead, this particular utility. And so I think the really important thing, because Guy just mentioned net metering, the old school approach from the utility corporate sector is anything that hints at revenue erosion is to be avoided at all costs. So the doctrinaire response is all the other ratepayers are having to subsidize this lucky few who are benefiting from net metering. And in truth, she has just shared with us what could be a model of the future in which there are both utility system operation and ratepayer and customer benefits across the feeder. And I'd like to, I don't think that we need to be confrontational. I think that we need to move ahead together. And I would just like to thank her for bringing this very important news from EPRI to this gathering.
So the question in the second row, do you have one?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know who the question's for, but, you know, the SunShot Initiative, you know, is where our federal government is giving funding across different states or jurisdictions to basically help us streamline permitting. In our state of New York, you know, I have a specific interest in New York City, but when do you think that we're going to see a more streamlined permitting process in our state?
We'll take that one. There are 1,607 jurisdictions in New York State. I think there's 335 in Massachusetts. We have over 1,600 in New York State. My understanding is that 60% of the land mass of New York State doesn't even require a building permit. I'm not sure if that's for PV, but that's my understanding. So the governor's New York Sun Initiative is focused on balance of system costs. And one of the key areas that was very well put on the Vermont slide is that if we're able to streamline permitting in New York, that can represent a huge incentive to the industry. And we're going to be looking at that and developing that, and maybe building on some of the stuff that's happened in New York City, as well as looking at models like Vermont to see if we can move that forward.
I would also just add that, you know, the Photon magazine article that I referenced actually compared, you know, two inverse states, Vermont and New Hampshire, literally, you know, share a lot of things and then just separated by the Connecticut River, and how vastly different the two solar installation markets are. And I think the more the industry and more utilities and more state regulators start to look at this and realize some of the upside of streamlining, I think the better the industry will be.
Suffolk County, just a quick background, Suffolk County has a pretty interesting streamlined permitting model on Long Island. And the permitting authorities that we've spoken to, there's a lot of them out there that would welcome this kind of a thing, because they don't really know how to handle, they don't have the training to handle how to do a PV installation or inspection. And so a lot of them would actually welcome some sort of a central approach to try to, at least if it was on a voluntary basis, something they could adopt voluntarily.
I just wanted to respond a little bit to what you said, is that, so New York City won one of these solar rooftop, and our partners are Con Edison and NYPA and about 29 other organizations. And just so you know, the structure the Department of Energy very wisely laid out is that it's a two-phase project. And the first year is a race to the rooftop, which started last February. So we have until February of 2013 to do very specific tasks in New York City. As you can imagine, it's a very tall order. So there is a timeline there, and there's incentives. So the 29, 30 different areas that won this, or 22, I guess, different areas that won this, they're all trying